Good morning and welcome to this Saturday, the 9th of March in the third week of Lent. Shuv. Well, that's what Hosea says, Prophet Hosea, in the first reading. Shuv is the Hebrew word for return. And Prophet Hosea says, "Come, let us return to the Lord." But how do we return to the Lord? In the Gospel today, Jesus addresses a parable to those who are convinced of their own righteousness and who despise the rest of the world. You know, the two people who went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was the tax collector. Well, I want you to pause there and let's go back to what Prophet Hosea says in the very first verse of his reading. He says, "Come, let us return to the Lord." Shuv, the Hebrew word he uses. So how do we return to the Lord? I'd like to share with you an instance when very recently in this week I had made a trip to a pilgrimage to Velankani. And when I was in the church, I was struggling to pray. I knelt down before the altar and I began to say the Our Father. But I was distracted. So many things happening around me that did not allow me to focus my attention on the Lord. And then suddenly it flashed before me of how my body was aligned to the world and how my mind was wavering from the world to God. And although my soul had a pursuit of God and was intent on God, my body and mind seemed to be wavering. And I acknowledged this weakness of my body and my mind to God, and immediately, instantly almost, my whole prayer began to fall in place. It was aligned. So what does that have to do with today's reading? Well, very often when we enter a chapel or an adoration chapel or a church or a place of worship or even in our home when we begin to pray, we just seem to be stuck. We don't know where to begin. And we do all sorts of things. We try an Our Father or a Hail Mary or some of the structured prayers, or we try to babble something to the Lord, straight away interceding for our needs and the needs of the world. Not much happens when we seek God in that manner. In the Gospel today, we hear the tax collector, while the Pharisee went babbling about different things, saying, "Oh God, thank you. I'm not like the rest of humanity. I'm not so greedy. I'm not dishonest. I'm not adulterous. All these things. I am above all of this. I'm a righteous man," he was trying to say. But the tax collector was a simple man in terms of his approach to God. He simply went there and he said, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." So the model for reflection here is that when we begin our prayer and we come face to face with our God, a great way to start prayer is to acknowledge our sinfulness and our brokenness. The Lord loves that approach because only then can we get into an intense relationship with each other, rather than boasting of what we seem to be doing right all the time. So today, even when we practice our Lenten rituals, the Lord is not seeking all of that. He is seeking your love, and He wants you to seek His love. And that's the core of our Lenten journey. So, brothers and sisters, as we continue and we plunge into week 4 next week, let's continue to go back to our goals that we set. And let me remind you that we said we would become the principal goal is to become closer to God. So, if this is the goal, then this goal will be enabled by loving God and loving neighbor. So, our Lenten journey is all about shuv, returning to the Lord. And we keep returning to the Lord time and again by acknowledging our weaknesses before Him. God bless you, and may you enter into a wonderful weekend and a great 4th week ahead. Have a pleasant day. God bless.